So yeah, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Good evening, wherever you are. So welcome to the workshop that I'll be giving, and I'll be talking about actually quite some stuff that has been said already this morning or this afternoon or this evening. But I'll try to make it a bit more specific maybe and try to help the people that are looking for a way to engage more with their university to make it more climate friendly, because I've seen a lot of reactions in the chat as well, like enthusiastic reactions, but also asking like how can we start this? I need some help in doing this, and I hope this workshop will be able to help you with that a little bit. I actually have no idea how long this will take. We might have a bit of time left in the end, but that gives just some more time for open discussion. Let's see where we end up. So yeah, my name is Chaïm. I'm currently here representing Push Sweden, which I've been a member of, just like Nadia. Only I joined a little bit later, beginning of end of 2019, beginning of 2020. But most of what I'll be talking about today actually relates to my period at Ghent University. So I was a student there, also a PhD student. And in Belgium, the system is that if you're a PhD student, you're actually more like staff of the university as well. So I got to see the university perspective, both from a student perspective and from a staff perspective. So that gives an additional interesting point of view, I think. And I was a little bit involved in the Green Office at Ghent University there. And so most of what I'll be talking about today relates a bit to what I saw or learned there. So this is a bit of the structure of the workshop. So how do we want to do effective advocacy? How do we want to effectively change what happens at our universities? Well, I'm first going to be very, very, very shortly talking about the why, and then yeah, who to target. I've seen a couple of stakeholders or people to target passing by already in the chat and in the presentations from before. So we'll be making a bit of a more specific list of which persons we could be able to target. And then what will we be doing? Well, I'll be giving some examples, and actually I really liked a lot of the examples that we already saw before. So it will be good to discuss them as well, and I'll be getting back to some of them as well. And then where, I'll be shortly going over that as well, like more specifically, where at the university could you possibly do some actions. All right, this is the only slide I have for the why. So this is a figure that represents the average temperature changes just in colors. I think, yeah, most of you will probably have seen it. So the why is pretty obvious. We all know climate change is here, is real, and is a problem. So that's basically the why. I'm not going to go deeper into that. We all know why we're here. And so the second point I wanted to touch upon is who. And since this is a workshop, I'm not going to be doing all the talking. So I'm just going to be asking you who is active at your university, and for now I'm just speaking in general terms. So yeah, we've heard some options passing by, but you can also get very creative. Like what I want to hear from you is who is active at your university. So basically, if you arrive at university, who do you see? Who do you talk to? Who do you meet? Everyone. So I would just suggest that you just write in the chat. I'm going to see if I can open that myself here. Or else you can just basically talk. I think everyone is unmuted or can unmute themselves. So yeah, please go ahead. who is active at your university, and I'll keep track of this a bit as well, and add the names here, or names or professions or whatever, so that when I send the slides afterwards, you can have this as well. So anyone that wants to start, just throw something in there. I mean, an obvious one is students, right? It's ourselves. So we arrive at university in the morning or in the afternoon. We see students. Who else?
Do you mean like everyone? Like, I didn't really understand the question, but if I say researchers, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a perfectly valid option. Yeah.
We have in the chat also student unions and teachers.
Yeah, exactly. Student unions, that's a good one. Unions, yeah, professors, teachers. Teachers, indeed, that's a bit more general. So that's the people that we get in touch with the most. But if you think of the university as a company more, then there's other people as well.
We have different offices, like sustainability office.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it more like management kind of. Management departments.
I don't know if this maybe goes into management department, but in Uppsala, at least, I know that the universities own a lot of land around the city, and they have people who's in charge of that and taking care of it and everything.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you mean that exactly? So is it the people managing the land, you mean?
Yeah, I don't know what I meant.
Indeed, I'm just trying to place it as well, like where does it fit the best?
I suppose maybe it goes under management departments or just caretaking.
Yeah, exactly. But that's
maybe, yeah.
We also had administration stuff in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed, administration also a very important one. I can maybe add one that I know is relevant in Belgium, but I'm not sure how it is in other countries. We have university catering as well. So there's catering staff taking care of the student meals. So those are also people you meet. Like, I mean, if you go really broad, then yeah, you can go for cleaning staff as well. Like everyone at university that is active there, that is doing something there, and that you either could be targeting or that you should at least take into account that they're there.
Also the board, the president, principal.
Yeah, you mean like the higher management, I would say, or like the big bosses.
Yeah, I think board or principal.
Yeah. Obviously a very important one. All right, I think, yeah.
I think the principal or president is actually one by itself because it's so important.
Yeah, I call it the dean, or like yeah.
In the chat they say that in Africa they have security stuff.
Yeah. All right. Great. Any others?
Anna, you started mentioning something, Anna?
Yeah, because here we have like every course has its own like management. So I'm thinking of using that as a strategic, just some help to get some guidance of who can I get in touch with. I don't know how to. Yeah, that's it. And also my college is a Catholic college, so I think using the religious ethical values are also in strategic to reach out the high level
Yeah.
bosses.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually very interesting. So are there Catholic, like specifically Catholic people active at the university? I don't know, priests or other, or is it more like the values of the university?
Yes, our dean, I think our dean or our president is not a yeah, it's a priest. So religious groups, yeah, I think.
Yeah, let's call it like that. Okay, that's very interesting. I mean, I was thinking about some groups before myself, but like my own list was yeah, improved a bit. It's become wider. Yeah, cool to have this this international perspective. Yeah. All right, great. So actually, I'll just stay in this mode for a bit. You can all see my slides clearly enough, right? It's still big enough. If not, just shout, and I'll go to a bigger mode again. All right, so now we've listed some of the stakeholders that we have, some of the people that are present at the university. And what I want to do now is apply a tool that's often used in project management. So we can see our actions or our engagement as a project. And we have different stakeholders. And what we can do now is place them in this graph. This has two axes, and basically you have the influence of the stakeholder. So for example, the dean or like the board of the university would in this case have a very big influence. And yeah, other like students, or like in general, students would have a little bit of a lower influence. I'll come back to that later. And other people might even have lower influence on what the university does. And then you also have the interest of a specific stakeholder. So it might be that there's a research assistant or a course leader that is really interested in climate change or in other environmental questions as well. So his or her interest is very high then. So he'd be all the way up in the graph. And other people are simply, as we know, sadly enough, not really interested or just don't know a lot about the problem, and they would end up in the lower end of the graph. And so what I'd like you to do for like a couple of minutes now is think about your own university, like the people that you already know, and place them on this graph. So I'm not talking about like professors in general or teachers in general or students in general. That's really hard to do. But I can imagine that there's some persons that you think, okay, like he or she is definitely interested, but he doesn't have that much influence, or that person is not interested at all, but he does have a lot of influence. So I'm going to give you, 1 or 2 minutes to think about some persons that you could place on this graph. And that will hopefully help you forward in the future as well. All right. I'm actually already going to continue. You can still keep on researching that for a little bit, but what I'm going to talk about next is the way this tool is actually used from a project management perspective. And this slide shows you how it's used and what you should, or how you should, so to say, treat your different stakeholders. So the ones that are interested in your topic, in climate change and sustainability, and the ones that have a very big influence, at the top right of the graph, according to management principles, you should manage those people most thoroughly. And then, yeah, you can read what it says for the others. But obviously, I mean, we're not, in this case, we're not really project managers in the strict sense of the word. So there's two things I'd like to emphasize here. Well, you can probably already guess that instead of managing a stakeholder most thoroughly, in the upper right corner, instead of managing them, that's the people that you can use to your cause, right? I mean, that's the people that are interested, it's the people that have influence, so they're on your side, and those are the people that you should try to work together with. And the second thing I want to mention is actually that this tool assumes that people are in the boxes that you see here. Now, of course, for us, it's very interesting to try and move the people from the one box to the other, like to increase interest or to increase your influence. And when I was talking about students having a low influence before, if we as students are very interested, but we feel like we're having a lower influence, then the point of all this is actually to increase our influence as a stakeholder, and try and work together with the people that already have influence, or try to put pressure on the university so that they really listen to us more. And that also relates to the hashtag that was used before. I think Rosemary yeah, I'm not sure who mentioned it. I just put this in, yeah, during the presentations this morning. So that really applies here as well. Like, we need to use the power that we have, but also try to make sure that we have as much power as possible. So that was about the who to target. And of course, we went over this pretty quickly, but I hope you can use the tool for some analysis later on within your group of climate students, and really just go online and look for the persons that are active at your university and see who has the power, who is interested, and try to do a mapping like that to make your work a bit more effective. So what priorities is important in the what, I think. And so that's the main reason I put in this graph here. I think if I remember correctly from the paper, it really applies to, yeah, let's say Western countries or the global North. So I don't want to emphasize what is in the graph too much. I mean, personal choices, I don't want to point fingers here. I know we're all doing whatever we can. What I do want to say here is that, well, it's important to prioritize. And also, a university is a whole, but a university consists of persons as well. And so we also do need to realize that it's personal choices that can also help in reducing impact. And in that sense, it's really important, okay, what kind of personal choices have the largest impact? So what do we need to focus on? What does our priority need to be? This is one example of a graph that really points that out. And another one is this one. So I went to the website Our World in Data. Some of you might know it. There's obviously, what's in the name, a lot of data on there. And so what I'm representing here is the greenhouse gas emissions by sector in Sweden for the year 2016. I think that's the latest one I found on that website, at least. And once again, what I want to point out here is, well, if we want to decrease emissions in Sweden, then from this graph, it's pretty clear that putting some pressure on the transport sector, on whoever is involved in transportation, that is where we should direct a lot of efforts, because that's where a very large part of the Swedish emissions are still coming from. I know this is on a country basis, of course, but then my next question or slide is a bit more linked to the university perspective.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have a question in the chat. Yeah. Why is aviation and transport not together, and what other transport do you have for the 20 midtons?
So the transport, the transport that's included In the upper bar, I'd have to double check, but my guess is that this is mostly car transport, truck transport, because aviation and shipping is mostly looked at internationally, and so that's why it's not included in the same transport bar as the upper one. So transport, the upper one, is mostly people transport by cars, by trucks, as long as it's within Sweden, I assume. Also, maybe inland flights might be included there as well. So I think the aviation and shipping is mostly, what comes into Sweden and what causes emissions in that way. But I'm not really sure about that. And I think on the Our World in Data website, they're surely explaining what is included in what. So if you want more information on that, that's really the source to go to. So back to the more university perspective. So obviously you can have this ranking or this list of where do the emissions of a country come from. And the question already popped up this previously in some sessions before. Is it possible to have this for universities as well? So let's maybe start with my first question, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes again, since you're online, since you're following this meeting. So basically just quickly Google if your university has a sustainability report. Does it have, or like any report that gives information on either sustainability or more specifically on CO2 emissions? Like I said, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. I mean, it's probably something that you either already have done or should probably do if you want to try to impact your university. First, check what they've been doing so far. So I assume you all know very well how to Google or use any other search engine. And then, if you find one, just quickly scroll through it and then let me know what you think. Is it detailed enough? Does it lack detail? You think it looks more like greenwashing to you? Or does it really feel like, okay, the university is taking this seriously and they really want to become more sustainable?
Or a question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, a question. Maybe just to help with the search here, they might call it something else, maybe. So maybe are there alternative keywords to be searching for? Sustainability reports one.
That's a good question.
I mean, sometimes it's could be.
Maybe if you want to go more specifically, you could just type the name of your university and then emissions or CO2 emissions. You can go for environmental responsibility, sustainability. Like it says, it's a bit a more general one. You can try and use CSR, like corporate social responsibility, as well, because that's the name of some of these reports. But I'm not sure in what way that would apply to universities. But actually, if you go to the website of your own university, like the homepage, and start clicking around a bit there in the right direction, I think you will notice soon enough if they're doing something or totally nothing, or like, at least from my perspective, like the Belgian or maybe European universities, they basically on the homepage, they already have a button linked to sustainability in some way. So that does make it easier. If they don't have that, then you'll have to maybe dig deeper. So I'm wondering, are there people that find nothing, like nothing at all? I mean, I'm not talking about an actual report, but at least a web page or something. Are there people that really don't find anything?
Well, I can, for one, while doing some work for the national board here in Sweden, I tried to get a hold of every person who's responsible or in charge for like all of the major universities in Sweden. The people in charge of the environment on that university, and a lot of them had good ones, like good clear websites where you could just click on like, oh, environmental goals. But there was a lot that I think it took me like half an hour to even find something about sustainability, unfortunately.
Okay, well, we don't have half an hour now, but but that's, I mean, yeah, if you have to look for it for half an hour, that's already maybe not a very good sign, I guess. Yeah.
Marie brought up in the chat that there seems to be a huge report, but they exclude finances. Marie-Claire, you can give a hint as to what you specifically mean when you mean finances. Do you mean the investments?
Yeah, the investment or the divestment. So they target a lot of different issues, but for them, like the finances is like a topic you're not touching. And since our universities, and I think in other countries, like the UK or the US, they have like huge, funds themselves. And I think this is an issue they're not really taking into consideration, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that is exactly why I think it's important to look for that information and really critically look at it and indeed see like, okay, you're doing a lot, but financially, apparently nothing. So that could be really a point that you want to work on, because as you say, it can have a very large impact, and there's currently nothing done about it. So that's exactly why it's useful to have this information up front and determine, like I said before, what your priorities are. So moving on from that, I'm just going to ask the question, what do you think that the most emitting activities are that your university is involved in or has an impact on? And it's basically the same as with the who walks around at university question. You can go really, really broad here. So like think about the university, everything it has, it owns, it does. And yeah, basically throw up what you think, what you think the university is large on when emitting. I'm going to try to keep track of that here as well. So basically, just like before, just throw up some ideas.
We have a raised hand.
Could you repeat that?
We have Ashman has raised his hand.
Okay. I'm not sure how to assign hand raising, but go ahead. Person who raised your hand.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm not totally, participating in all of the events or one of your events, but I'm really interested in your activities, especially your platform, also your workshop that you are conducting now. So I'm Ahmad from Indonesia. I'm also part of IPB University. And based on your question that you proposed before from this workshop, my university, IPB University, have engaged a lot of people, all stakeholders, including students, young people in the specific platform organization, as well as researcher and also like lecturers working at the university. And they are committed to embody the goals of goals of sustainable development, needed to reduce greenhouse gas emission, which through climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation technology, and also finance. And all action based on the research have been implemented in my university, including they provide like electricity based on bioenergy, based on the solar panel, and all is working well. But suddenly, in the few years and now, nowadays, some universities have confronted some difficulty, especially to get finance from the government of Indonesia to sustain the projects. So that's also happening in my university now. So it's really difficult. Maybe if you have any advice to get it to solve the problem, the problem about the finance, maybe you can share it. And in addition, if I want to look for about the education, education, especially on climate change, that happening in my university. It's very so rare for all of the department, all faculties in my university. It's only a certain department working on climate change, but because of students are really so interested, they are most of them are really young. Yeah, of course they are young. They have a good passion and passionate to what is it, to understand, to ascertain about climate change, and they want to implement action, or just set theories, and after that we don't want to continue, and then they just want to do some action, some campaign that they don't want to make a sustainable action. It will be nonsense. So what my university and especially my platform want to collaborate with your platform, also your institution, which is we want to embody sustainable action. So the action, it can reduce directly and indirectly climate greenhouse gas emission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I heard two main questions there. So apparently your university is already doing quite a lot when it comes to sustainability. That's really good. That's amazing to hear. But then apparently because they're doing that, they're like losing financing from the government. Is that how it is?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a complicated question. My best guess, or my suggestion would then be to put pressure on the government, because your university is clearly already doing a lot. So the forces that are against you, so to say, are not really at the university anymore. They're really quite progressive in that sense, I would say. So yeah, then it might be more useful to move towards the government, and you can do that as a separate group or as students as well. I mean, you can perfectly go to the government as young people, as students, and demand, or like at least ask why they're decreasing their financing of the university because of some choices of the university. So that would be my answer to that question. And then you had a question about the courses as well, where you have some climate change related courses, but not that many, and it depends on the departments or the faculties or the universities itself. And so there, that is actually something that you can talk about to some people at the university. You can go for professors, or maybe even, depending on how your university is organized, go to the faculty level or department level, or university-wide. I know that there has been going on some effort about that at Ghent University as well, to have courses that are not mandatory, or that are not necessarily part of a specific program, but that any student can have as an elective course. It depends a bit on the system in your countries as well. At least in Belgium, I know that you can have like your courses, the courses that are part of your master's or your bachelor's or your education in general. But you also have some elective courses that you can choose. And that could be a starting point to have like those climate change courses as an elective course. Of course, you mostly attract people that are already interested. So that's maybe a bit of a downside. But yeah, you can definitely push for, you can either have the specific climate courses, or at least a dedicated amount of hours within a certain course dedicated to the link with climate change, because there's a lot of courses that are in one way or the other linked with climate change, and even that would be interesting just to take up within that course. So that's something really interesting to look at indeed. I hope that was an answer to your questions.
And we have one more answer in the chat. students can self-organize courses and invite experts. And I think in Climate Student Sweden, we also have local groups that have made a petition about this. So you can try to push the university by using different kind of advocacy methods like petitions or debate article in the local paper, or you can have a discussion panel together with the student union and all this kind of different activities for pushing this question. It's really important. Yeah,
exactly. And maybe I want to add something to that as well. So you can organize it yourself, and that's obviously really good. If you want to have it more, I'm going to call it institutionalized, as in included in the normal courses, I think it might be a good idea to try and provide some material or some research yourself. Because, I mean, the way I always experienced professors is they have a lot of work already, or teachers in general. So if you come and ask them, okay, can you include this part about climate change in your course as well? They're going to be like, they might be like, yeah, that's interesting, but for me, it's a lot of extra work. So yeah, I'll do it, and then it gets postponed or whatever. It doesn't happen in the way that you would like it to be. And so in that sense, it would be really helpful for them, I think, if you could, well, don't prepare the whole part of the course, but give them some pointers, a starting point, something they can start working from. And I think that's something they will really appreciate as well. Yeah, and so that actually already touches on the last point of this slide. But maybe let's get back to the emissions. Yeah, so activities that your university is involved in and that have emissions directly or indirectly. And some of them have already been mentioned before as well. So I don't know, ideas?
Yeah, for example, the catering, the food which is consumed.
Yeah, indeed. That's a good one. That's an important one. So I'm actually going to write that under indirect. Like when preparing this workshop, I realized that direct emissions and indirect emissions are in this sense, or like, I don't know, the line is sometimes blurry. Excuse me?
They are interfering sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And there wrote a lot of people in the chat, transportation.
Yeah. And that's, so you can have that's actually one that is one of those vague ones. So you have the direct emissions by the university. So, I mean, sometimes faculties are apart, or you have a big campus and things need to be transported. That could be emissions. And also the indirect ones. Yeah, go ahead.
Is the second big one after transportation?
Can you repeat that, please?
Energy.
Yeah. Indeed, energy use, and a bit linked with that maybe is the buildings that the
construction
has. Both the construction and the maintenance of the buildings itself. I remember from my university that the insulation was really bad in a lot of the buildings. So yeah, that of course increases your energy use and your emissions by a lot, depending on the energy source you use, of course, but still.
Investments.
Yeah, I'm going to put that under indirect as well. Indeed, investments already came up, pretty important.
If you're talking like broad unlimited activities, it would also include if they have research going on that are like against making the progress needed.
Yeah. It's actually one I didn't think about myself, but it is pretty relevant. Yeah. That's also, like, it was mentioned before, and I was thinking about it, and that's a really hard one, actually.
In Sweden, for example, we have a lot of research about forestry management, telling that it's really a lot about cut down all the trees, because then we can have biofuel. And biofuel is better than fossil fuel, but cutting down the trees is not so good. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason I'm saying that this feels like a difficult one is because in this case you're really talking about in some cases at least, like the researchers and the professors and the teachers working on that. It's what they do. It's their job. It's sometimes their passion to do research on that topic. So it can become really sensitive, and I think it's hard for a university to say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, because they're effectively saying, okay, well, to a department or a professor, like, your research is not wished anymore. We don't want it anymore. And that, I mean, it might be true in a way, that the research is not kind of future proof, but it gets really sensitive, I think.
It's important to have a debate about it, and that there is a balance with different perspectives and different research about it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not because you're researching one thing that you can't switch to another, right? I mean, methodologies sometimes remain the same, or like the area remains the same, but you can do it in a more like from a more sustainable perspective. So there are definitely ways to shift that. Yeah.
And also, if you have more like if you combine social science with nature science, that could give a broader result and so on. So
yeah, very true.
We also have garbage disposal here as a I guess.
I'm again wondering where I should put this.
Direct, I would assume. I mean, it's the waste products that are.
Exactly.
I was wondering because it goes to the landfills, so produces methane. I think maybe it's indirect. I don't know.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, perhaps you can say indirect, since it's not the university that is handling the garbage disposal. What happens to it afterwards? It leaves the university. It's a different thing. Perhaps it's a bigger issue. Also very interesting.
But it's also like the waste production in general. Does the university focus on using a lot of reusable stuff or one-way stuff?
Yeah, indeed.
Another thing.
Tap solutions or cloth solutions. Like if the bathtub is running over, do you close the tap or do you go for the cloth first?
Yeah.
Another, just because it's very interesting, and also to keep things a bit running faster here, the zootechnic department here at the Maria José Arias Boullies University. So livestock can be part of the university.
We also have Agricultural Science University. We have livestock all over Sweden.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting to hear.
In addition to that, we also have not only research about the forestry, but we also conduct forestry and in agriculture. So that's land use.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's for me this is also new perspectives. I mean, universities owning livestock and land. Well, land of course, but from my perspective, that was just buildings. Nothing more.
They're owning livestock and
yeah. Wow, yeah, that's.
So they are actually making the solutions for how to have livestock in the future. It's really important research.
Yeah, indeed. Like, an interesting addition, like an interesting source of emissions as well. It would be interesting to see, like, for each university, of course, where the big chunk is, right? So that's if it's possible, if you have like the sustainability report that we talked about before, does it have data on these kind of emissions and on the evolution throughout the years? If it doesn't, well, maybe that's a place to start pushing your university. Okay, we want to know what kind of emissions you have, at least. And then you can really start prioritizing and see, okay, and university itself as well. I mean, you can prioritize on what has the most emission, but university can prioritize on that as well.
It also makes it a bit complicated because at my university they have the goal to be climate neutral 2025, I think, and they can't reach 0 greenhouse gas emissions because they have these livestock, and also they use their forests to compensate for fossil fuel emissions, so, and for their livestock. So it's really complicated.
Yeah, indeed. That really adds an extra dimension. Yeah.
Okay, I have something else. The equipment board, like how often are computers board? Do the employees get pretty often new phones and so on?
Yeah, I'm gonna put that under material use. Like indeed, departments, like how often do they buy new equipment, which can be a lot broader than computers as well, like measurement equipments, really, big expensive stuff. Yeah.
Maybe also at least not only the use of energy, maybe also the supply of energy. Which kind of supplier do they have? Is it fossil or renewable?
Yeah.
So not only the amount, as to where it's coming from. And there's also missing an S in transportation between the energy.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, great. Anything more? I mean, to me, it looks relatively complete, I would say. Yeah, like in transportation, like direct or indirect, I'm not sure if it even matters that much, but of course, like teachers and students, researchers travel to conferences as well, often by plane. So that's also a source of emission of university.
Maybe you could look at what was like 2 slides backwards and think of, well, what are the biggest emitters, and what are the so you should prioritize accordingly. I mean, exactly. If you cover these things, then you will be on your way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have done petitions all over Sweden at universities targeting only the air travel emissions, because that's the biggest one. So it's important that you prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on for the what. Think big, start small, and that's actually something I maybe don't like saying, because the time of small actions is a bit past us. But unfortunately, in practice, it's sometimes what you need to do. But first, think big, right? So try to make a long-term plan, and if possible, try to do it with your university, right? So you did the stakeholder analysis, or you know who's in charge where. Try to talk to them about emission reductions, about specific actions, and set goals, right? So that's really important, because it makes also sure that you can hold your university accountable to something if they pledge like to a goal, that within 2, 3, 4, 5 years you can say, well, you're not hitting your targets, you're not doing a good job, you said you would do this, now really we need you to do it. So yeah, think big in that sense, but start small, because at least the university that I was working at was not huge but big, and so it works like a big company in some ways, and there's bureaucracy and administration, and sometimes things go slowly. That doesn't mean you don't need to push. You always need to push harder, faster, but don't get frustrated. I mean, celebrate your small victories as well. so I'm including some small examples, and actually some examples already passed by during this meeting, and maybe one that I already no wait, I'm gonna point it out later. So this is one, yeah, also relating to yeah, flight traveling by researchers. This was done at Ghent University, and basically they made a map of what locations are easy to reach by train within a certain amount of hours, and then they made this flow chart to check. Okay, yeah, the first one is basically obviously, do I really need to be there? And that's hopefully a question that will be answered differently after the COVID crisis, because people start realizing that no, they don't always need to be there physically. So yeah, then the answer is easy: don't take the trip and do a conference call. And then yeah, second step is look at the location, and if it's relatively easy to reach by train or by not plane, then choose that option. And that's also something that yeah, the Ghent University board or management or whatever are really pushing for. I think under 6 hours is now the standard, and below 8 hours it's recommended to not take the plane. I do realize that this is yeah, easy to do from a Belgian perspective. I can imagine that from even Stockholm or from other parts of the world. Yeah, everything is a lot further away. So there might be other things that you need to target in that sense. So like as a last resort is also added here, compensate for your emissions. I think we all know that, yeah, compensating for your CO2 emissions is not the first one in line, or not the first option that you want to choose. But if you really do need to fly, then I think it's the least you can do. And that's also something that you can, from a university level, ask your employers to do, and that you can push for. Another action, it already came up, like the catering. So trying to push for, if your university arranges catering, trying to push for a vegetarian day or cheaper vegetarian meals or whatever. And I want to come back to the stakeholder analysis here, where I really emphasized the fact that, okay, list everyone. So we had security, cleaning personnel, also catering personnel. And that's, for example, a stakeholder that you might want to take into account here, because if it takes a longer time to prepare a vegetarian meal and they need to prepare it for, I don't know, 500,000 students, they are also people that you want to convince and have on board, or want to take into account at least. So that's a really important aspect as well. Another one.
Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but I think you are a bit over time now. So
oh, sorry, I didn't realize.
No problem.
Yeah, so this, yeah, another example, but we've had a lot of those today. And then actually the location is, yeah, a bit secondary. It's basically if you want to reach out to important people or to students, pick your place. Like some places at university have historical meaning. You can just go stand in front of the office of a dean or of a professor, or like talk to them in that way, put pressure that way. And then some convincing arguments. And I think actually this can be summed up, yeah, as in universities, they mostly, a lot of it is about PR, like the first point, and that's why I really like the climate action ranking that Leonie mentioned before. So the ranking of universities in terms of how they're doing on sustainability. Universities love rankings and they want to be on top. Use that. Call them out if they're not doing well. Make a ranking, compare with other universities. It's really important to them. Yeah, so yeah, if I'm already over time, I'm gonna wrap it up here. If there's any more questions, I don't know if we have time. Otherwise, write in the chat, and I'll be glad to answer them. Yep, that was it. Thanks. So I guess,
thank you, Chaïm. Perhaps we can share your presentation after.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can definitely send it to you, and you can share it with everyone. Yeah.
Especially since we all added to it a bit. It was nice.
Yeah, exactly. That was really the thought as well, to just spread it afterwards. Yeah, and thanks for the interaction, you guys. It was really nice for me as well to have the more international perspective. I really hope it helps people on other continents as well, because it's really hard for me to compare how we do it here and how it's done in Africa, or like Indonesia, or Brazil. So I hope it did help in a way, at least. I guess we're waiting for the participants of the other workshop to join, or
all the participants are back, so we can start with the conclusion now.
Yeah. I'll leave the floor
Victor?
to you again.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Oh, hello everyone. I hope you enjoyed your workshops, getting inspired and picking up some valuable knowledge, tools. So going into the last session now, we will focus on the CSM organization itself, regarding membership, benefits in joining as a group, open positions in the organization, and look forward towards the future. Let's see here. I should be. Could perhaps someone be sharing the screen, and could we do the same setup as before, perhaps? Because
Okay.
yes, the recording.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now we're going on to national memberships or different memberships. There we go. So yes, the first type of membership is what we call a national membership, and this type is aimed towards already existing national networks that want to collaborate with other networks and groups on an international stage. And in the future, when more climate student groups exist, networks of those groups can come together and create national networks, such as the one in Sweden, for instance. And on next slide here, we'll be mentioning the a second type of membership, which is the local membership. And this type is aimed towards already existing local groups at specific university or colleges that want to join up our larger movement. And if there are no such groups whatsoever, we will then help you in starting up those using the climate students name and framework, if that is what you want to do. And of course, then you will become a member of the organization. And then we have our next slide here. Then, so why join up? Well, the climate crisis is a pressing global issue that requires an international approach in tackling it. And we have no time to lose. And instead of working in our own